Hey, I've got straight up 3 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. People out in Zoom land, can you hear us okay? No one out there? Oh, that's easy enough. Yeah.
So we never get a confirmation or ask for a confirmation who's going to show. Yeah, I'm just wondering because, we run pretty thin. It's like we can barely make a quorum at times,
Okay, audio check done. We'll move on to item number 3, additions, deletions, or corrections to our agenda. Do we have any? Okay. We'll move, we approve the agenda. How about now? Better? Okay, I'll swallow the microphone. We may need to crank the gain back here a little bit more on the far right slider.
Okay.
Wait a second. Test, test, test. Better now? Okay.
So you move to
I move to approve the agenda.
second.
Been moved and seconded that we approve the agenda. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Our next item is approval of the minutes from April 12th. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections?
Nope.
If there's no additions, deletions, or corrections, I'd entertain a motion.
I move to approve the minutes.
I'll second. It's been moved and seconded that we approve this from April 12th. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, moving on to new business, our review of the land use code. Installment 1 of 3.
Yeah, and I just compiled all of our comments into this document. I don't know how you want to go through it. If you want to just target those areas or.
That's what I would suggest. If we try to go through everything line by line here,
Okay.
we'll be here all night.
There are some just grammatical things I corrected along the way. But this seems to be the first. Is it right if we shut off those?
Yeah.
Okay, so there are a few comments about nonconformities. Let's see. Paul's comment, how would prospective buyer know if they were purchasing a nonconforming structure? Does the town make the list of nonconformities public? Does the seller have an obligation to disclose? Sean commented, the definition is very vague, and I don't believe that someone attempting to be in compliance will easily understand what is meant. And I think, Sean, that was your question. How shall the owner establish a nonconformity?
Yeah, I think it's on the next page when it says that it's the owner's responsibility to establish it's right at the top of the page.
Oh, okay.
Right. So it's their sole responsibility to establish nonconformity, which
I mean, this is in terms of when an owner applies to do something. First of all, I think it's the town's or the staff's responsibility to identify whether or not it's non-conforming, but
I think so, yeah.
So I guess, are you saying that conflicts with this statement of the burden?
Yeah, I just don't think that people are going to necessarily know, or they may not choose to know when they're completing purchases or whatever about property lines, setbacks, things
Right.
like that. Yeah.
Okay, so when when someone does come in and do a modification, do we need that sentence in there that basically says it's up to them to basically make sure they don't have a nonconformance? And then if we find it, it's like, yeah, it was basically your responsibility to begin with. That's how we did stuff in some of the federal things. It was the company's responsibility. And then if we found it, you know, we had to point it out to them and they had to actually correct it. But in this case, I think we don't have anything that basically identifies.
What's
If
an
we-
example of nonconformity?
For example, a deck or something that's been built over the right of way and it's been there for maybe 20 or 30 years
Yeah.
and they come along and they want to extend it.
Mhm.
Well, if they leave it alone, basically this code allows us to leave things that are already there alone. But if they try to extend it, then they would get hit with the,
And how would they know it's
Non-conforming.
non-conforming?
They would have to study the code.
they'd have to study the code and
Can we
actually
expect
get a,
citizen to study the code and figure that out?
well, we do tend to ask for these ILCs, these improvement locators, and that's a large key in wanting to try and identifying
Yeah.
So
what
for,
may be non-conforming.
I think for the most part too, their builders they already understand these things. Somebody calls a builder and says, I want to extend my deck or whatever, they're going to look at their property line and say, well, we can't build a deck there. That's not your property,
Yeah.
you know, in general.
So yeah, I think, I'm wondering if that statement is there basically to help protect the town in case someone does.
Yeah, it's just the way it's written. It's
Yeah.
like, it almost looks like somebody has to come in to the town hall and say, my property is non-conforming.
Right.
You know,
It never matters unless they
right.
want to do
Unless they're gonna,
something.
unless they're going to
Yeah.
do something. It's just the way it's written.
It is. I agree. It's
Yeah.
kind of it. Why would they have to establish a nonconformity
You're going to find out.
ever? Yeah, it's the
during
town's,
process, it would
it's the
say.
staff's responsibility, I think, to
Yeah, I would think so too.
identify it and let them know, because most of the time that's going to be the way
That's
it
usually how
goes.
we do it.
Yeah.
I mean, they bring in their
Well, does that-
ILCs and we say,
Do you see what I'm saying, Todd, on that?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it's kind of weirdly worded. And so do we want to take a stab at dispositioning these?
Like, just whether or not to remove a section or
Well, I
Are
would
we
think-
removing it or are we just sending notes back to the attorney?
we'll note it
Right.
and maybe get clarification on what's
Right.
that point of view, but it may
Right.
not be, it
Should
may
we-
not be
should we
necessary.
Say substitute staff instead of solely on the owner? Would it be the burden of the staff to figure that out when somebody comes in with an application?
Yeah, I'm kind of hesitant about that because I've had to deal with things like that.
Well,
Both side.
I mean,
and that's
because
it.
the attorney's not here, all we can do is send our notes and
Yeah,
wait for her to respond, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
To answer the other questions, I guess, Paul's questions here, how would they know how would a prospective buyer know if they're purchasing a non-conforming structure? Does the town make the list of non-conformities public? That answer is no. Does the seller have an obligation to disclose? That answer, I believe, is no. I mean, sellers have an obligation to disclose material defects, but I don't think they have an obligation to.
What
To-
we've seen a couple times though are the title companies are starting to wake up.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we've been put on a national database or what, but there was one property up here where the title company actually flagged it. And they had built part of a retaining wall in the town property. And so if the title companies are starting to flag Green Mountain Falls, we're going to probably see more of these things come up when properties sell.
Right.
And if it is non-conforming, has been for 30 years, and nobody really noticed it, what happens then? Do you have to tear down the wall or?
We have provisions in the new code that basically allow us to leave it alone, as long as they're not modifying it.
It's a grandfather type deal, which
Yeah.
is
Grandfather.
historic and, historically, that's what's gone on in the town
Makes
because.
sense in a town like this.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, just thinking about this more, the burden of, because there's a certain advantage in the nonconformity status. So if you look further down here, if minor repairs or certain work is being done to improve it, it's okay as long as it's not being extended. So
Basically don't want to expand the footprint.
right, or expanded.
my-
So I think that might be where this burden of establishment is,
Yeah,
because
it's fine. I'm not,
But I agree that, maybe we could
it
ask
just seemed
some,
vague.
yeah.
Yeah.
Ask for some clarification on that.
Yeah, I really think that statement there, that the burden one
Yeah.
is purely there to protect the town.
Okay.
That-
I'm fine.
we
I
did that.
don't want to spend all day on it for sure.
Well, I'll get some feedback on
Okay.
that one. All right, the next comment here, this director term which pops up and this is supposed to be basically staff, whatever staff position. It's indicating of a planning director, which we don't really have, but it is supposed to be staff, not a mayor or elected official. So this term could be different. I mean, it could be whatever we
Yeah,
think it should be.
I've seen it pop up in other areas as well.
Mhm.
Is it in our definitions? I think if we have it in our definitions, that
It just,
could
I
be-
was just curious to know if we were creating another position by having a title
No,
in the code.
no.
Couldn't
But yeah, we
replace
could-
it with staff?
we could basically replace it with staff too.
I'm thinking, because that's exactly who's going to probably end up doing this. is
Yeah.
Staff.
Yeah.
So make a note to either define director more or perhaps change that to staff or
And then the
something.
job
Director,
descriptions over here would identify who in the staff would be doing it.
what's that?
Right. The job descriptions here then would define who was going to be doing these things. So
Right.
staff means
Mhm.
somebody here, and we define who that person is, probably you, but
Right.
Yeah. I would almost prefer we change it to town staff.
Okay.
That'd be my preference.
It just seemed very specific. That's why
Yeah.
I noted it. That's all.
Then town staff would give us some flexibility as far as who's here at the time.
Or if it said, I'm just thinking if the town went the direction of doing a planning contractor, which is a thing. I mean, it's not, we haven't just barely started researching that, but in the event that the town doesn't get replace the part-time planning person that it's had for the last few years, then another option is a planning contractor, which just deals with applications and write-ups and things like that. So it's possible it's not town staff, but obviously then at that point it would be people direct, under the purview of
people
the
reporting to town
manager
staff.
essentially.
Mhm.
So.
On page 5, it says under 12-1-60A, they're talking about penalties on conviction and punishment of pursuant to Chapter 1, Article 4 of this code. Where is that? Is that somewhere else?
That's part of the, all of the, I guess the penalties are hard to find in Chapter 1 of the code overall,
Okay.
which that's not being addressed as part of this.
Okay, that
Um,
just refers to some other part of the code that we don't have
right.
right now.
Well, it's there, the chapter
It's
one, I
actually
mean,
there.
that's our main, that's the town's main code, chapter one of
Okay.
that, which is in the front of the code to establish all these different penalties for code violations, which is a whole nother.
Yeah, and we don't have the
ball of
latest.
wax.
Do we have the latest out on Unicode yet?
No, it's getting
Okay.
close. I think it should be published next month.
Okay.
But there is a general penalty, as this alludes to. It's basically a general penalty section of the code that's already there and probably did not change. I don't know. I don't think there are any changes from what I remember reviewing.
I think they changed the dollar amounts.
Okay. So anyway, that's, if any changes to that should occur, that's a whole different conversation, basically.
Okay.
I had one question here. I don't know if this is everyone, I guess we'll learn more when she comes out with the actual definitions of these zoning districts. But one thing to think about would be this combination of single and two family residential district. I think it's my understanding that her plan was to have it basically everything that's R1 now or R2 now will be SFR, which means single or multifamily allowed anywhere in town. So just something to think about. We'll learn more about the definition of that when she gives us those other
Okay,
installments.
so that's basically, it sounds like those townhomes or duplex type things that are basically two houses in one,
Yeah,
one
so with that, wherever that SFR is, then that would allow for duplex, possible condo type situations. So something to think about.
Well,
moving
and-
forward.
And really the real limiting factor on those things is going to be septic systems.
Yeah, there's stuff built in that's gonna
Yeah.
limit the capabilities of somebody to do that for sure.
Yeah.
So I don't think it'll be that much of a factor.
I don't
Renaming it.
Yeah.
What's that? Yeah. There's R1, which is most of the town, and then that R1 has the definitions under R1 are based on lot size. So there's like a 5,000 square foot threshold, and then a 10,000, and then a 15 or 20. I always forget, and then those determine the setbacks. So in this structure, it's possible that everything that we have separated now based on size could land in that SFR bucket with the same setbacks as everything. So that's another just thing to think about.
Yeah, right now, we don't have a combined, it's either zoned business or zoned residential. I don't know if we have a combined. Yeah, I know we have a situation that is currently happening. Yeah. So, yeah, right now, everything.
It's actually coming back. It's mixed use.
Yeah.
You see it downtown Colorado Springs and other places that they're mixing condos and businesses and whatnot.
Yeah, I've seen it up in Longmont. They had
Yeah.
a whole area that was that way.
If they ever get it off the ground in Woodland Park too, their Saddle Club area that they're trying to develop. The plan I saw, it had that mixed use stuff in it. Yep.
Let's see. Does anybody have, I don't know, there's no comment specifically on this, but on this, the review procedures, everyone.
Yeah, hang on to that for just a little bit.
I think we've talked about this in the past,
Looks,
this layout. So
What, just for my knowledge, what is the difference between a minor site plan and a major site plan?
To be defined.
I see.
We'll talk about that more in
Yeah,
a minute
that's coming
here.
up.
Okay.
But I think everything here looks pretty good. The only decision, well, except for maybe this minor subdivision, this chart has it being decided by by staff, basically. But I think we've talked in the past that any subdivision should come before planning commission. So I think that this maybe should be changed to reflect the same as any these subdivisions down here. Does that make sense? Or at least the what would
Yeah.
it be? It would be let's see, the
Already,
major subdivision preliminary is decided by planning commission, but even on the major, the final plat is decided by the board of trustees. So does that the minor, do we think that this should be review by staff, decision by planning commission, and same as basically the preliminary plat, or do you want to make it the same as the final plat of a major subdivision?
Have we really defined what we mean by minor subdivision yet?
They have it, it's defined as, the last we talked, it was, like 4 lots or less, or, some sort of square footage threshold. I don't think we've settled on the actual thresholds of that yet.
I would think that anything where they're building new should be decision by board or final decision by board. Anything building new. I don't know what you guys,
Yeah, you can't go wrong by having it that way.
yeah.
Yeah,
We don't have it's not like the volume is so much that
exactly.
Yeah.
it's,
And I understand why they do it this way, and we've copied from larger towns, but larger towns, yeah, the more the planning commission really only gets involved in the really big outfits
right.
that come through.
Mhm. Correct.
That's the appeal.
Yeah, if the decision is to the board, then the appeal would be to the Board of Adjustment. Okay,
Well,
so
the way it looks like though is if the commission makes a decision and it needs to be appealed, it would be appealed to the trustees.
correct, yeah.
Okay.
It just goes up that next level.
Right,
So
right.
wherever the decision is, it
Okay.
goes to the next.
Yeah, but so maybe general rule of thumb, anything where it's going up new, put it in front of the board.
So would that include my garage?
No,
Just
that's
build
not a
new garage.
subdivision.
This is a subdivision.
Mhm.
Okay. Is a garage categorized under the minor site plan or major site plan, or where's that?
We
Yeah,
don't
it's
know
one of
yet.
those site plans. That's to be
Okay.
determined as well. That we'll talk about
But
here.
like say, if we go with a rule of thumb with anything new, then, a thing like unless we throw it into the minor classification, a garage would then fit or go into the board of trustees. And where we have that threshold.
I don't think so, because a garage is not a subdivision. A garage is just
I'm
a,
talking general
Site
peanut
plan.
butter. Higher level, think higher level. If we're gonna put everything new, a new structure in front of the board,
Mhm.
with the exception of whatever's in the minor categories, then the garage would be.
Oh, I see what you're saying. The major site plan, which would not be that's not the same as a subdivision.
Right.
That is being decided by planning commission, appeal to the board. So that's, I think, or at this point where the garage situation would be.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? According to how it's written here, I'm not saying, you can,
So-
the
so-
commission can
So that
recommend.
rule of thumb I just rattled off wouldn't fit in that one either.
Right. Because anything new, that could be a shed, that could be a
Yeah.
garage, that could be a single family addition. That's not a subdivision. Subdivision is actually subdividing lots for development. So it's a much larger project, much larger scope.
So then the question for the rest of the commissioners here is, are you okay making that decision at this level? You know, so that would be
For what, major site plan? or something?
major site plan decided here. Would not have to go to the board.
It's essentially what you've been doing to this point.
Yeah, it's just we make recommendations to the board now for a lot of things.
Yeah, but for instance, all that single family addition, everything we looked at last time, the only thing that goes to the board now, subdivisions, not talking about, but everything that goes to the board now is only variances, easements, things that are out of the ordinary that maybe make a project possible, like we talked about last time, but it's not the project itself. If there's a single family addition that doesn't need any special things like variances or easements, then that right now is approved by the planning commission. and I
Basically,
stand-
our current architectural review is doing that.
Correct. Mhm. Yeah.
I don't have a problem with that. I mean, it has to go through county anyway.
Yeah.
So everything's going to be legit. It's not
Yeah.
like something's going to fall through the cracks. I don't feel like,
And really about the only thing we look at is our setbacks and
Yes.
right of ways anyway. and
Exactly.
Heights and,
yes,
some very generic type things.
exactly.
So yeah, okay. So then the real question comes in on with the subdivision, with the minor subdivision, if it's so many lots and whatnot, do we want to follow the same?
Or we could not even have a distinguishing a minor or major. It's just a subdivision that always goes to the board in the end.
Yeah, that may be if it's going to be the same anyway, we may just call it just subdivisions.
That's what I think.
Okay, I like that.
Because there's not a lot of opportunity for that in town, and any subdivision has a relatively significant impact on the town, regardless if it's 4 lots or 5 lots or whatever that threshold is. I think
What would be an example of a subdivision? What's somebody going to come in and get a subdivision for?
if they have a lot I have an example I could show you here. Let me get this up on the screen. Get to the right property here and I'll pull it up on the screen.
Yeah, you know how you just combined your lots? To
Yeah,
me, someone would come in and that would have the combined lots and say, okay, I'm going to put in duplexes.
Oh,
yeah, so
you have to get it subdivided for duplexes rather than single family dwelling.
Maybe.
That's more like you have a big lot and you want to sell half of your lot to somebody so they could build a house. That'd be a subdivision
Oh,
of the lot.
okay. All right.
Or what they're trying to do with the outfit just east of us. I think now he's trying to
Oh, you mean
subdivide it down to like
Bronze
2.5
Village?
acre. Yeah, I think he's trying to subdivide it down to 2.5 acres.
Yeah.
yeah, so there are several lots in town that are big enough to do that and that are not developed yet.
Okay.
But let's see if I can actually not mess this up this time.
Okay. Well, never mind.
Well, just as a visual, this is right off Hondo, and that's
my house.
Scott's. This is yours right there.
No, to the right. That's my house right there.
So right behind that is this is one lot, the way it's defined right now, or one parcel, one schedule number. But someone came in to inquire, what would I need to do to subdivide this to develop whatever they want to develop on that.
Okay, so they're just dividing one lot into one or more.
Right.
Basically.
Okay, all right.
And so the major versus minor subdivision typically has a threshold of how many lots are proposed as being that threshold. But in our case, the volume of these things happening is not high, and any development of that sort would be potentially very impactful to the town. So I think the thought is that all of that should go to the board, not have a distinguishing.
Yeah, so it
Threshold.
all get decided by planning commission under this scheme.
So I think it would make sense. Do you all agree that that should be recommended to just have one subdivision category? Everything in this
Yeah,
review by staff, a review. So the preliminary plat on a major subdivision, that basically is them coming in, doing the preliminary study and the preliminary all that. And they have to have the preliminary plat approved as it indicates here. So basically, planning commission would approve the preliminary plat, but then the final plat then has to be approved by Board of Trustees, and there's two different processes. So I think, that's the thought, or that's one of the differences between a major and minor, is that a major is usually so big and complicated that, two plat processes are typically necessary to iron out all the details and get everything, get the whole project done. But that's the other question, does everything need to have a final or a preliminary and a final plat? I guess that's the other question in this mix.
I guess we need the 2 meetings and the public comment and all that. I mean, is that what they're talking about? Probably trying to lay it out like that.
Yes, and
Yeah.
the star here indicates public hearing
Right.
required, so,
So that's probably why the division's laid out like that.
yeah.
Yeah.
I suppose it would be possible to have, you could say the only difference between a minor subdivision and a major subdivision is that the minor doesn't require a preliminary plat. If it's a more simple situation, or if it's simply the first, it's a more simple subdivision situation than the major, but you could still have the same review procedures than a major does.
then we got to define the majors and the minors.
I think that's probably a good idea. Just have her throw a note in there what the difference is going to be
Okay.
at the end of the day.
And we'll talk more about that on that threshold. So I think just have a minor, but have the same approval process as a major,
Sure.
essentially.
Yeah, that makes sense.
We good on that? Historic preservation, we're really not doing that right now. So that's a whole other thing that might be implemented, might not in the future, but this was just something that she threw in as a typical. So that, I guess in the end, doesn't really need to be in this chart for us to start with. So we could essentially eliminate all that.
And variances now are decided by planning commission with this.
Right. And yeah, there's no appeal listed here. There should be an appeal here, at least in A, if it's not decided by the board in the beginning, which is possible. You could recommend to change this to be R and A, or D, I'm sorry, as some of those other things are, if you think variances should go before the board. Right now, we have to, right now, the board does it like we have been and with public notice and all that stuff. I mean, I
Yeah.
kinda think that
Has the
makes
board
sense.
actually ever come back with,
to deny it,
yeah,
I don't know, not that I've seen, but it's possible. And I think this is saying too, that there should be a public hearing as part of the planning commission by this asterisk being there. But it's just a matter of, should the planning commission make that final? I don't know.
I'm okay with the planning commission making the decision on a variance. And then if there's some kind of weird situation with it where it needs to go to the board, I suppose we could bump it up to the board if needed, but I think I'm okay with, I mean, the planning commission is already making decisions on like architectural reviews and whatnot.
Yeah,
So,
I think with the appeal, I don't, probably just forgot to put the A in there, what have you, but obviously, if there's somebody who is opposed to it, they could appeal the decision
Mhm.
up to the board anyway. So,
Right. Leave it.
you know, if there's not contentious, then
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay. Good with leaving it there for now. And I'll make a note of all this so that the other commissioners can review it. And then obviously when it goes to the board at some point for final approval, then all these will be noted as well, all the discussion points.
actually, the planning commission has some statutory responsibilities by state statute. So yeah, the planning commission is actually a quasi judicial committee, and they actually have some authority.
And through this re-rate, we're also trying to get to the point where they can make decisions that do not have to get pushed up to the Board of Trustees to try to simplify, streamline, and get the people who are trying to get the work done so they can get the work done. And it doesn't drag, you know, we have a limited construction time in town. So sometimes it ends up dragging a lot and becomes I think, an unnecessary burden to the people who are trying to get something done. So
We've had more than one instance where, you know, something that was really, really simple and obvious took weeks, months to get through because
You go
we
go
would
to
have,
the trustees and they table it, then it's another month before they take it up again.
yeah.
And
But yeah,
I was in that.
yeah,
we had
So
several
simple.
cycles and with a deck, actually a deck expansion. And we were in a situation where we couldn't get things noticed properly and it drug out for weeks.
I had a fence permit go a month and a half or almost 2 months. Because
Right.
it got tabled the first time and
trying to streamline it so people aren't inconvenienced, you know. Yeah.
Okay, next. All right, so yeah, so this is, so the application fees, on a lot of the fees, and the fees are determined by board action every year. They review fees, and a lot of the fees say $200 plus plus professional fees. So if the application in certain cases has to go to an engineer for the grading and erosion control, for example, or if in the case of, you know, a special easement or something like that, basically the cost of those professional services is passed on to the applicant in those cases. And this is what this deals with here. So this interest statement is, I think, exactly how it is now. And I don't know that it's ever been enforced or figured out, or I don't know a process of doing it myself. So I don't know if that's you know, excessive or even legal or what, but I mean, if she has it in here as a lawyer, I would assume it'd be something that's legal, but is it really necessary or is it excessive or I don't know. I don't know
Yeah,
a
I
whole
think-
lot about other.
You'd have to have somebody specifically tracking this stuff, and I just don't know that that's very practical. Maybe
Mhm.
there's another way.
I
It
mean-
can be done, a set fee, X amount of time equals X amount of dollars, something like that. I don't know.
I agree with Paul. I think the amount is kind of excessive, but and it's probably, like you say, it's probably burdensome to try to keep track of it. That's probably the worst part.
Yeah, it hasn't been done, so
Yeah.
it's probably not, I would think you would have to have somebody specifically for that.
Yeah, but I'm not sure if we get enough to,
No, you wouldn't. You absolutely would not. I'm just thinking maybe there's a simpler way.
that's what I, yeah.
That would seem to make sense, yeah.
I agree.
So impose a penalty. I would
So
think-
I guess throw it to her like that, see if we can just do a fee instead of trying to.
Just a flat fee.
Yeah.
And that
just
fee
a
would
penalty.
actually probably have to be determined by the board
Mhm.
on the fee sheet with everything else. And so you could put, this sentence could just be, penalty after 30 days or whatever. I think that's maybe the thing that the planning commission should talk about is the time frame is 30 days. Yeah. Yeah.
I like that idea. I think it'd be a lot simpler.
Simpler, yes.
Like 45 days after mailing or something to
Yeah.
that extent. Because we can't know when they received it. We can know when we mailed something out, but we can't know exactly when someone's received something, especially with mail as it is today. But anyway,
Yeah, I
So-
like the flat, I like the penalty type,
flat rate
yeah.
and put that to the board. And then it's just a fee, a penalty, whatever it's called, land use, late payment penalty fee or
Yeah.
whatever it's called. Okay. Okay, so this section deals with costs for posting, mailing, and recording. Now, I don't exactly know what's totally normal, in a lot of other communities, but to me, the way we've been doing it here is that staff posts the necessary notices. Now, for short-term rentals, we do put the burden on the applicant by making them print the letter, stamp the envelopes, address the envelopes, but then they bring it to me to send out. So I know when that clock starts for the review period. But I do the posting on the window and the website, or, wherever the official posting places are. To me, that's a staff duty and not something that should be fallen to the applicant because of the, I don't know, I guess the importance of it and the verification that it's done correctly. So, so that's one piece here. The next piece is the actual recording of it. Now that's different. So to me, how we've been doing it is putting the burden of recording on the applicant, because after everything is approved, then it's their business, right? Like after the town, we'll take that sale of that town parcel as an example. We, town staff helped get through all the applications and get through the process for planning commission and the board. The board ended up agreeing to sell that parcel. And then at that point, the town's responsibility in the matter was basically done because the town agreed to sell it. They came up with a contract, they executed the contract, they did all that. At the end, there was a short stack of documents that needed to be recorded to the county. To me, that's the applicant's deal because it's their property, it's their ownership of that process. And once a recorded document is filed, that gets mailed back to somebody, and that somebody should not be the town unless it's town property. But if it's someone else's property, all that stuff should be mailed back to the applicant. So this doesn't really say which, but to me, this indicates that the town is doing the recording the way it's written. So that was my only comment on here.
I agree. She can clarify that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then this, I forgot I apparently lost my train of thought during this comment. But I think I was alluding to the fact of why the town should not be the one to record it, because if that was the case, then, these things could drag on a little bit longer. So,
That sounds reasonable to me.
so this abandoned applications section, one comment was me just saying, are we okay with this? Paul added, at whose discretion would be the decision of additional fees if it's abandoned and then brought back up again after that 6 months or whatever the time frame is.
I'm okay with it because if after 6 months and no contact or anything after they've been given feedback,
It's kind of
yeah.
starting
Now,
fresh.
what I don't know is that like the 3-month letter, should we send them a reminder, say, okay, and there are 3 months, but that's something else to track.
Right. Yeah. I think it's either, I don't know if it's maybe subject to additional fees is the right way to say it. I think if we're going to do fees, it should be black and white and not subject to someone's discretion.
Well, doesn't that kind of take it into questionable enforceability every time we put in a decision like that?
What do you mean?
Well, right now, the code says, we're supposed to, kind of have something that meets the mountain environment type of thing. And that's pretty much an opinion-based type of code. And I think we've been told that's not enforceable.
I'm not sure it's absolutely necessary in this case anyway. If it's abandoned, then if they want to go up again after 6 months, then they start the process over, right?
That's what I'm saying. I'm just saying after 6 months, it's considered a new application.
Right.
And you have to pay a new fee rather than maybe subject to additional fees.
Yeah, it seems unnecessary.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that
Agree.
okay? You agree with that?
Yeah, I'm wondering if somebody starts a project and they can't get materials or the builder can't get the job done in 6 months. Is that what this is talking about? Or is this something else?
No, this is if an application has been submitted, and then so they come in with an application, pay it, and then planning commission gives feedback for what's deficient,
Okay.
and then they take that back, and then they don't resubmit anything new
Okay.
to fix that within the 6 months.
All right. Yeah.
So yeah, once you're approved for a project, there's no time, the town's done. Like there's projects going on still right now that were approved last summer or whatever, there's no
Yeah.
time frame after the fact.
Materials shortages and things like that.
Right.
Yeah,
Sometimes 6 months
It's not that.
is
Not
bad.
No. Once you're all approved, you've got as much time as it takes to get it done.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, here's the public notice I got on a little bit soon. So this says for all actions, the applicant, for all actions requiring public notice, the applicant shall provide public notice.
Yeah, I was a little taken back by that as well. It's like, to me, it almost sounds like town function.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable for town to just take on that responsibility. Unless, like I said, for short-term rentals, there is some, envelope stuffing and there's cost for postage and things like that, that we put back to the applicant. But for this, there's no cost really other than time, and printing, but it's standardized and it should be consistent. So I think that we should change that to staff.
Agreed.
Yeah, I would agree too.
Oh, I had
Just a missing.
this just references, I think, there's just a missing reference there. So
Right.
fix that. And I don't think there was a comment for a little while here.
Here's the juicy one.
Oh, yeah. So this is where, Mike, you're asking about minor versus major site plans. And then there's exemptions from any site plans. So the minor site plan, it says here, allows the town to administratively evaluate smaller developments for compliance versus a major, which would be a single family home addition or a garage or whatever planning commission and board decide it is in the end. But I think the major, so there's a decision to be made. What's minor, what's reviewed by staff only and approved, stamped by staff, what's major, which is stamped and approved essentially by planning commission. And then there's this third category, which is exemptions, which is the major heartburn, I think. Well, there are two big decisions, but exemptions say exempt from site plan reviews at all, which I think is
Yeah,
problematic.
I'm totally against
Yeah.
that. No, we have too many problems with encroachments today to just turn people loose.
I agree.
Let me
So,
ask a question
mhm.
about what qualifies for this. If somebody wants to replace the boards or the floor on their deck, just take the wood off and replace it with Trex, they have to come and get an approval for that? No, not changing the pattern or the sides or anything else, they're just putting a new floor.
We've had one of those come up recently.
yeah, the town, I have an email, actually it was John and Lisa's situation, I think, right? I think so. John asked me that question. But let me get the language from Pikes Peak, because Pikes Peak has different rules.
I had a neighbor who told me that they were doing that at one time and somebody came along and said, stop, you've got to go get an approval to do this. And he wasn't changing the shape of the deck or anything. He was just putting a new floor on it.
It
Yeah,
might
let me
be
get the
Pikes Peak.
language from,
Yeah, Pikes Peak Regional's got their own, some of their own language on that.
sorry, I'm trying to find this. But, and I mean, the short answer is that the town and the Pikes Peak can have different rules on that. The town can say, if you're just replacing the decking and it's the same shape and it's the same footprint, it's this, then the town doesn't need to be involved, but Pikes Peak Regional still does because they
Really?
want to. I think what they said was, if you are, I can't find it quickly here, but if you are replacing the entire walkway, then yes, you need to go back to them for a permit. But if you're just doing repairs, like you're repairing a
new board.
rail or a new board here or there, then no, you don't. But if you're replacing basically a significant portion of the structure or the full decking, then yes, you do. But that's a question for us, is whether, at what point does the town care?
Yeah, at what point does the town kick in? And doesn't Pikes Peak also kind of look at whether or not the deck is part of your main entrance?
I'm sorry, what does Pikes Peak?
When they are looking at, deck requirements and what needs to get a permit and whatnot, are they also not looking at whether or not it's if it's your entrance?
There's some language. I think they don't require permit if it's, if it's on the ground, if it's basically supported by the ground, it does not need a permit. I think maybe unless it is a major entryway or something like that.
Okay.
But the town doesn't even mention, I don't think the town's code even has the word deck in it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I would actually propose I don't like paragraph A in any way, shape, or form whatsoever. I would actually propose that one be either stricken or we put in reserved or something like that in. And then we take, to me, the minors are fences, decks, outbuildings below a certain size. I would not necessarily lump garages in with the same thing, because we tend to want to have a driveway plan for those. And so,
And erosion control stuff.
if it moves enough dirt, yeah. If it moves enough dirt or disturbs enough area, then yeah, there's the erosion control plan that goes along with it. So yeah, to me, the minors are fences, decks, and small outbuildings. And then, we just have that be administrative. And
What about, I don't know if now's the time for it, but the discussion about decks, I think there are a lot of situations where the decks deteriorate. The person wants to build it in the exact same footprint, which a lot of times is going to be a non-conforming situation. So should every deck rebuild come here? Or, I mean, that, at some point you have to determine whether or not it actually is the exact same footprint if you're going to term it like
Yeah,
that.
I mean,
But
there is oftentimes some shenanigans that go on because you often hear the term that it's an exact replacement,
right.
but oftentimes it's not an exact replacement.
yeah,
They're redigging footers and things like that. And
We don't want a bunch of crappy decks all over town.
well, and it's more about, they end up
well,
pushing the limit of what exactly an exact replacement is, let's say.
and the other thing is, if we at least make it an administrative item, at least they come in, we can then, kind of maybe push the information on the Pikes Peak Regional as
Well,
well. And, then, because like say Pikes Peak Regional and us have different requirements, but if we just kind of make it such that it's administrative, then we can, have them come in and we notify Pikes Peak Regional, and if they want to send someone out, they can send someone out.
Right. And they would.
Yeah.
4 inches.
Yep. Well, we have, for anything new with the town, we've had a similar situation with another potential applicant, where they own both properties, but unless they combine the properties, you got that property line and you got setbacks and you're doing it in something new.
And in that
Yeah,
case,
it
it
was
would be a
not planned.
variance, which would be a public hearing. And if the neighbor doesn't care, then they don't comment at the public hearing. So,
Yeah, the best.
but
way
if they
would
do
be-
care, they
The
would.
variance typically doesn't involve the next door neighbor. It's a setback issue.
Yep.
It's not 4 inches of deck on the other side of the property line. You see what I mean? Well, typically they apply for a variance in that case.
They could potentially get a variance. We've issued variances to go almost right up to property lines. But if it's over the property line. then
Over
really what
property
they-
line's different. Yeah.
Different situation. And they would have to work out an easement.
So put decks and minor with no provision for any replacement should come here unless it's a
That
true
way,
repair.
yeah, that way, we can kind of flag Pikes Peak Regional as well.
Yeah, because the
You know, 'cause
structural,
people
is
don't
the most
understand that there's
important.
2 steps. There's us and Pikes Peak Regional. And if we
Mhm.
flag them as well, then
and Pikes Peak they do respond and they do a good job of
Yeah.
the structural integrity because a lot of people want to put hot tubs or whatever, so especially in the Airbnb environment, like the Hondo one that been dealing with for a while. It's
yeah,
like,
that's the concern I have is that, okay, someone redoes a deck and they verbo it. Was it structurally sound to begin with? I know of an instance here in town that was done, actually, I think before I even got on planning commission, that was not structurally sound.
mhm.
And yeah, when the guy got in and started looking at it, he was shocked. And
Yeah,
if we just let people just kind of go on their own, we almost need that check and balance to make sure that we got structural stability.
yeah, I agree.
It's usually on the initial build. The
It's
initial
more,
build.
Yeah, I don't think that they have a schedule for,
well, no, I mean, I think what we're talking about really is like an initial build of a deck that's 30 years old or 40 years old. Oftentimes their footers wouldn't meet current code and the way they're attached to the main structure does not meet current code, or the stringers or runners would not meet current code. So if they do an exact replacement, they're not really doing themselves a favor. From a safety point of view, well, if there was a permit process for that replacement, yes. So, but oftentimes you hear the term, well, it's an exact replacement. So I don't believe that's a real.
that's a good point. Yeah, to just have them all come here and
I think
get up
so.
to the new codes, whatever that is. Yeah.
Yeah, at least give Pikes Peak Regional a chance to make sure there's no structural issues.
The one thing here, so we can basically, like you said, reserve that exemptions if the town ever thinks of a need to add an exemption, it would be there to just add it. But
Yeah,
for
I would
now,
say put it in as
sounds
reserve.
like no exemptions. Minor site plan would be decks, fences, accessory structures. Do you want to set a threshold to accessory structures? Do you want to include hedges or walls at all? Pikes Peak Regional has a threshold for their walls at 4 feet. So anything 4 feet or over, they require, I mean, who knows how many people actually do that one, but they do require their process for 4 feet and over. The town doesn't have anything specifying walls at all, unless there's the dirt disturbance comes into play.
I'm asking the commissioners, do we want to basically put the retaining walls in the same bucket where you just come in and get an administrative item and we just make sure that kind of flag Pikes Peak Regional?
I would vote for that.
You think it's a good idea to do retaining walls?
But staff approve those along with the other minor things, hedges, retaining walls, decks and small buildings, whatever small buildings are. Small
may-
building would be like a tool shed or something like that, right? That's smaller than a single car garage.
Pikes Peak's threshold is 200 square feet.
I think it's a good idea to mirror Pikes Peak Regional as far as these things are concerned. If we don't have anything for retaining walls, we probably should.
Because somebody's gonna build a 15-foot wall, you
Yeah, I
know,
would-
because there's no,
I would think we'd be looking at, hang on, questions, please. We're discussing up here. I would think we'd be looking at probably similar things that we look at today. Where is it on the, are they in the right of way, or do we have the right setbacks and
Mhm.
whatnot? Pikes Peak Regional, it's anything over 4 foot. Has to be engineered. And you know,
Yeah.
that way, if we at least get a kind of a semi-site plan of this thing, we can look and see, make sure we're not doing any more encroachments. And then we've Pikes Peak Regional.
If it's over, yeah, if it's over 4 feet.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah, so just to be clear, that would be a new thing that the town, so retaining walls need a site, would be a minor site plan. And then if it's over 4 feet, we would then flag it for Pikes Peak Regional. Okay.
Okay. Hey, we did have a question from the public. Okay. Well, this whole rewrite has pretty much been copied from larger towns or larger cities. Larger cities, their planning commission gets involved in significantly higher level type of activities. And so, yeah. Yeah, in our, yeah. Now exemptions where property lines are more defined would probably might make a little sense, but we've had so many issues with encroachments. Almost every time we turn around, we're getting a new encroachment, either into the right of way or something. And if we put in exemptions, we're opening the door for more encroachments. And so for our community, I don't think it's the right thing.
I think one exemption I could think of that we kind of treat it as an exemption now, but it's not, I don't think it's specified anywhere, is a roof replacement. The town doesn't do anything about that. It's all about Pikes Peak Regional. Should that be listed here just so that for the public,
For
it's
the-
clear that for that specific thing that they don't need one. Or another thing I could think of would be like those little kind of plastic kind of prefab tool sheds that are,
Mhm.
you know, they're about maybe 80 square feet, maybe at the most, or something like that. Cause it's easily movable. It's not, you know, like anchored to the ground in any way. It's not a significant structure. It's just a tool shed that could, if it became a problem, could be easily moved. I don't know if that would be something
That may
would-
be something we, in my mind anyway, we may want to consider in the future. And the reason I say that is again, we just have too many encroachments,
Mhm.
you know, especially on right of ways. So yeah, if people are dropping sheds, even those prefab plastic ones, you know, those, you know, they get anchored they usually anchor them to the ground somehow.
Yeah. I mean,
But
they're not like
they're not,
an engineered structure that's
yeah.
needs to be
They,
planned
and
out.
some of
very
them
well.
will pour a slab, you know, to stick them on too. So yeah, I would almost just soon you know, leave it as the accessory structure, 200 square foot, just come on in and talk. Now roofs, we have no code on roof. replacing a roof. Unless we started implementing some of the wildland urban interface codes where we start looking at class 5 shingles or something. But like everything else we're looking at, okay, are you encroaching into a right of way? Or, someone's property line?
Yeah, I don't think roofs are necessary because the rules for interface and for materials is already incorporated in the Pikes Peak Regional. So I don't see why we would have to be involved in that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would leave roofs out.
What about landscaping? Is that exempt?
Landscaping's exempt
That's-
right
Should-
now.
Should that
we
be
don't have any
specified?
codes on landscaping, so
Should that be specified in here though?
yeah. But
Well, there's two things. There's landscaping for the retaining walls, but there's also, maybe it's the support of the next to a driveway. It's not necessarily, artistic. I look at landscaping as being more of a presentation piece, whereas another function of a wall would be mechanical.
So do you want to specify that in an exemption versus because earlier we talked about retaining walls in general, but I think there's a good point in that
do you want to
some
actually,
retaining walls aren't they're not,
do you want to actually keep the exemption paragraph and right now just list landscaping?
could.
And walls
Yeah.
less than
It
4
is.
feet, is that right? The wall is less than 4 feet, for example.
Less than 4 feet, do not have to have, they don't have to be engineered.
Or you could line it up with Pikes Peak and say any wall, an exemption is a wall under 4 feet because
Yeah,
they don't care about it. We don't care about it.
I still get back to that encroachment thing. We need to make sure folks aren't building stuff in right of ways.
Right of ways and
Yeah. And over property lines, I think we've had both. So yeah, to me, that's the big thing here is trying to make sure folks aren't building something new in property that they really shouldn't be building it on. Yeah, right now we just don't have any codes for it. And so it's pretty much there's no need to even come in if you're doing landscaping, at least for the town anyway.
It's just not defined enough, I think, is what we're saying, right?
Yeah, right now I think it's just not defined. I
For an
mean, we could
exemption,
define
the
it.
definition is just kind of vague from this. Because obviously you can't.
depends on where it is on that chart.
Yeah.
That's right.
So I don't know, what do you think we should keep the exemptions and put landscaping in, or just leave it and just call it reserved?
Well,
I think, well, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think the major issue that I see is what you were already mentioned a few times, which is setbacks.
Yep.
And encroachments. That's what the issue is.
Now fences can be built up to the property
property
line.
line.
Would that be the same thing as retaining walls?
I would think so.
Whereas any other structure has to have
The
the setback, but just something to think about. And, you don't have to decide all this now either.
Yeah. I agree. I just don't want to create issues with exemptions with property lines and encroachments.
Yeah.
They go, well, it met your basic definition, but yeah, it's on your neighbor's property. That's a
And if
problem.
we had a code enforcement officer was driving around and looking for new construction, it might be a different setup. Yeah.
Well, typically too, people are mindful of their own property as well. If they see their neighbor building something on what they consider to be their property, I mean, yes, they will police and
If-
try to get that
if they're-
rectified.
If that property is here, we have a lot of
Right,
out-of-state
that's-
property
yeah.
owners too.
Yeah,
If they're around.
I
So-
mean,
Okay.
I was just gonna say that usually is a self-correcting problem when somebody is trying to put something out on somebody else's property.
Yeah.
Usually the other party is not gonna stand for that.
So for the accessory structure, do you want to make a threshold between minor and major? Do you want it to mimic the Pikes Peak?
Well, you said that 200 square foot and that, to me, that's
So
what,
under-
20 by 10?
Under that would be a minor and over that would be major. Okay.
Yeah.
What about hedges? I don't know that the town has ever dealt with hedges. Do we care? Would that be an exemption?
To me, that's landscaping. Yeah.
Definitely landscaping.
Okay.
As long as it's not encroaching on somebody else's property.
Okay, so to clarify, are we leaving exemptions in or are we going to call it reserved?
I think reserve for now, and it can always be modified down the line if necessary, or even before the final draft, if anyone thinks of, good reason. Of course, this will be discussed at the board level as well, so. Okay, did we cover everything in this? Coachman's. Oh, the one, she mentions somewhere, she had a term, she used accessory structure and accessory building, and I don't know if it was interchangeable. But where was the accessory building reference?
I think
Do you think
structure, I
it's this-
think like a pergola or something. When I think building, I
Right.
think a tool shed.
Right.
Right.
And that's a good point because I think an accessory structure could be a carport that's
Mhm.
over 200 square feet. That would still need to be site planned.
Yep.
So
Yeah, carport, that'd be a big carport if it,
should we just make sure that we define, do we need to differentiate between the two at all? I guess is my question, or just
I would
any
say,
structure, a building is a structure.
to me,
So-
to keep it simple, it'd be the 200 square foot. If you're putting in some kind of accessory, anything, if it's over
Structure.
200 square foot, then
So carport under 200 square feet is
It's a minor site plan,
minor site.
which just means staff can approve it versus planning commission.
Right. It'd still be like that. So.
Okay. All right, so. Yeah, so this whole section reads as if we have our own building department and we issue certificates of occupancy. So, I don't understand. This doesn't really relate to the way we do things. So I think maybe I can just, how do we modify this just so that it reads,
This looks like a cut and paste from
yeah,
It is
to
a
me,
cut and
right,
paste.
right?
yeah.
And it doesn't apply to us. So
I just don't know if we can eliminate it altogether or if, I mean, this filing of site plan. Oh, this is under, it's all under minor site plans, post decision. An approved site plan. I just don't, and if this is minor site plan, so this is nothing that needs a certificate of occupancy either. So
yeah, exactly.
I think I can just maybe read through this and kind of strike through the stuff that doesn't make sense, and then I can present it back, obviously, in the final
Yeah.
copy. So,
Yeah, that just, like I say, it doesn't make sense for
okay.
what we have.
This is the major site plan section. What was my comment here? Okay, so I'm just saying this reads, this is all under subdivision. So this is basically treating, it's lumping the vacations in with subdivisions, which I don't think are as nearly as complicated. They're pretty, like Mike's
Yeah.
application last time, it was pretty straightforward, and there's typically doesn't affect anyone else unless there's, I mean, and again, it could be always appealed, but I'm just wondering here, can vacations be treated somewhere else? Because I think we're going to have a lot of those, or not a lot, but I mean, I think that's one process that could help a lot of people if in that situation where they buy the lot next door, to get some more breathing room, and, to have to treat a vacation as a subdivision is kind of cumbersome. But I don't know where else to put them, if we just have them as a separate thing or what.
Well, it looks like, okay, so this is defining minor subdivision.
Minor, yeah.
And so the following are eligible to be processed as a minor, they just moved, subdivision, provided paragraph A above is met. And so A says, applies when the following are met. The property is within an approved preliminary plat. Proposed subdivision would create 2 or fewer lots or condominium units. Proposed subdivision would not require land dedication or dedication of public improvements. So weren't we looking at maybe a little different definition for minor subdivisions earlier?
Yeah, we were going to have both, but we were going to say that,
Minors don't need a final plat.
right, which they still need to have a threshold defined, which I guess is defined here. But even so, like this even mentions an approved preliminary plat being necessary to call something a minor subdivision. So that would be someone like a developer came in with a major subdivision, and part of that new major subdivision was being basically subdivided again, I think, and that would be already in that approved preliminary plat from the major subdivision. I mean, that's the only thing I can reason from that. But in here, this vacation is lumped in here with all of this. And so in Mike's case, he would have had to somehow proven that his vacation is within an approved preliminary plat, which I don't understand that. It seems like that makes the vacation situation potentially more complicated than it is right now. Right now, there are different kinds of vacations defined. There's the administrative vacation, which was Mike's because it didn't affect anyone else. There were no utility easements involved. And so that was able to be handled relatively simply. But there's other vacations that have to go to public hearing if there's a utility easement that exists, if there's easement to neighbors for access or anything like that.
Do you know if we kept the vacations in our rewrite, especially like the administrative ones? I can't remember.
That would be, I think that would maybe be in the installments, that the other installments perhaps. Let me look and see.
Yeah, it might be installment 2 or 3, but I just don't I can't remember seeing.
Because they are in chapter 17. Well, they're under subdivisions now, chapter 17. So that's this.
Something like Mike had, I mean, that's almost a no-brainer. Administrative, yeah, knock yourself out, go do
Yeah.
it.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yes. Mhm. Condominiumization.
Yeah, I don't think most people use that one in the sentence, so.
Yeah.
Assuming zero pay.
Yeah,
Trying to see if she defined, I don't. I was just looking to see, right now we have it defined as an administrative vacation versus a vacation by plat or resolution as it's defined now. But I don't, in this new version, I don't see I don't see that being distinguished at all.
Yeah, and again, a lot of this comes from larger cities.
Mhm.
When we're talking a vacation, we're just talking about eliminating a boundary line where the person owns both properties. He wants to eliminate, like I did, just eliminate the boundary line and call it all one.
Vacation could be also vacation of right of way or vacation of an easement.
So if the town has an easement right behind our property, or if they have a right of way right behind our property, and I wanted that property for something, the town could actually get rid of that right of way.
They could vacate it. In that case, if the town vacated it for no purchase agreement, they would have to vacate it in half equally. And like, they would go to
Between
each neighbor.
Stroll and us, there's
There's an alleyway.
a little right of way that apparently when the town planners drew it, they were gonna put an alley up through there. Then they saw those big boulders and decided probably not ideal.
Mhm.
And so that, if that were vacated, then half would go to Stroll and half would go to us. Okay.
Colorado into the cliff, and then go down, but that's actually the road.
Right, yeah, the undeveloped right of ways, right to way.
Sell the town, we sell that.
That's unclear. I think the town would have to vacate it and make it available to both. If one person didn't want it, then maybe there could be an agreement to, I don't know, sell it or do something different. But typically, I think that's even maybe a state statute or at least a norm is that if the right of way is vacated, it has to be split equally or at least along existing property line. So if there are 4 people involved, then it would have to continue. You'd have to follow the existing property lines, but be split in half essentially. But anyway, I don't know if vacations should be, I kind of like in our current code how they are defined. There's different types of them, and here it seems like it's all sort of lumped into one definition, unless I'm missing something or unless there's more in the further installments that might
Yeah, and right now
enlighten that.
we're defining minor subdivisions, no more than 2 lots.
Right.
So that, I think before we had more than that, wasn't it 4 originally? I like the lower number.
Yeah.
Major. Mhm.
I guess that makes, I don't know, kind of makes sense. I mean, the more I think about it. And just have any vacation be in the minor subdivision category? Is that what you're saying?
Kind of wondering, especially if we can do, I'm wondering where we would house the administrative vacations. Because it'd be nice if we could keep that somehow.
You just want to get the attorney to define it a little clearer maybe for us, and so we can move.
Yeah, or make sure she doesn't have more about
Right.
vacations and the
Right.
other installments.
Right, exactly.
Okay. Keep this as a question to return to. Okay. Let's see. Oh, there's more vacation stuff. Condominiumization. All right. Yeah, I'll read through that more carefully, that vacation stuff in here as well. All right, so this was just a question from me and Paul, I guess. Does the Board of Adjustment have to exist? I don't know, just because we're thinking that we have enough. Does it have to exist as a separate entity,
Yeah.
Really?
I think Ann was saying it might be a statutory.
Okay, well, thanks. Yeah, and I don't know I don't know if I don't think the town has one established right now, and so that's another board to fill.
Could another board serve as that also? Have two roles?
I want to say I've seen that, but maybe not. I don't know. I was thinking maybe that the Board of Trustees, but that would make sense if you're appealing something that. the
Yeah,
Board
I
of
was thinking
Trustees did.
For some reason, I thought on Board of Adjustment, you could be a member of another board.
Yeah. Mm. I'm just looking at the way our code defines it now. I know in general, our code states that you can't be on multiple boards or committees, but I don't know for sure if that,
We
I
may be
assume
re-
that
We may be
includes the Board of
revisiting that in the
Adjustment.
future. And again, that multiple board thing may get another review with a new board.
Okay.
We'll have to, yeah, we can look at that. I mean, I'm sure that
Yeah.
we can come up with a creative way
Oh, yeah.
to have its existence.
And have people be able to serve maybe on two.
Yeah, and maybe if there's a requirement for a board of adjustment, we could have individuals from the volunteer groups
Right.
say if there needs to be one, they would be on it or something like
Yeah, we
that.
ought to be able to figure.
I think we can
I think
figure
we'll
something
figure it
out so that it does exist more than just a theory.
Okay.
Sure.
This is just a bad sentence. I'm not sure. I'll ask
Well,
Nina what she
the
meant.
thing about lawsuits is that anybody can sue at any time. So I wouldn't spend a lot of time worrying about it. If you try to do the right thing for the right reason, usually that'll keep you out of court. Yeah.
This is making more sense to me now as I read it again. When I first read it, I was just like, what does this sentence even mean? But I think it's just a compound sentence that I wasn't looking at correctly. So
Right.
that's not a big deal there. Basically the Board of Adjustment determines restrictions and conditions that restrictions or conditions could exist for
Yeah, they
Whatever-
could
whatever
come back and
decision.
say, we want these additional conditions.
and what. Not sure why I questioned that.
Okay, can you scroll down a little bit?
Yeah, it's
So I'm gonna look at that table a little bit more too. That doesn't match what we said earlier down on variance. Says the decision of the Board of Adjustment. I thought the decision was Planning Commission. It's not
For
where it's
variance,
at.
yeah, that's correct. I'll double check this and make sure it matches up with,
Yeah,
with what we talked about above on that 7A table.
but it looks like outside of most things, the Planning Commission is the appellate. And so Board of Adjustment,
I'm not sure this matches up to that table
yeah,
up top, so I'll make sure that it does.
yeah. Yeah, I'm not,
What's that?
the appeal, I'm kind of wondering if the Board of Adjustment wouldn't show up more.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yes.
It should, because there's more on all these, on all the Board of Trustees. I think the appeal is the adjustment board, right?
That's what I was thinking the language said earlier that the.
Yeah,
that the
I
Board
don't
of
think this
Adjustment-
table
Okay,
is accurate. So I'll look through it. Or I'll review the discussion from the table 7A, make sure that this matches what we talked about up there. And then that will be in the final draft, at least of this installment. Anything else on that? I think that was it. Did you have
Cool.
any? We covered all your comments from, I reviewed the comments you sent me and they were just basically a summary of everything in the,
yeah, I sent
Word
Nate
doc, right?
an Excel file where I tried to actually capture all these and, disposition them just so we keep track of everything and whatnot.
yeah. And I'll go back through that and I'll update that Excel spreadsheet just as with what you decided and what we talked about, just as a summary to go along with the final draft of this. And then this will then appear with public hearing eventually at Planning Commission and then also at the board before anything's decided or recommended or accepted. So.
Have you applied for the extension yet?
No, I did get some information though, and just I have a list of all the things that we need to
Okay.
include with that. Nina sent that email today, sort of with a positive spin on the timeline, I would say, but I think probably we do need to. We're just very busy the next couple months, and so I think an extension, it couldn't hurt to ask, right? I mean, we already asked for one on this grant, which I'm a little
I'd be
nervous about,
I'd
but
feel better about it just because we have new planning commissioners are going to be coming on. and their input.
And
Trustees, the whole deal. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, it makes sense to me.
Yeah, for sure.
So that we're moving on to item 6, the code rewrite next steps, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
The extension.
Yeah, this is just installment 1 of 3,
This is
so we
one
have a
of
lot
3.
more to cover.
Yes.
So, yeah, so I'll apply for that extension. I might as well make it till
Make it
the end of the
lengthy.
year, basically, I
Make it
think,
lengthy.
just to give us plenty of time.
If you can get it, yeah.
Yeah, and then we'll just keep plugging away. Once we get Nina's drafts of the next 2, then we'll set up a similar.
What we're
Work
likely
session.
going to have to do is she has reached her not to exceed dollar amount if I'm not mistaken. And so outside of that, when we have comments and we need certain things updated, we'll probably have to redraft it. And once we're okay with that language, then we'll probably have to send it on through our own attorneys to have them review it and then come back before we can actually approve it.
And I was a little confused because there were funds granted through the state, and that was it was basically 25,000, I think. But then there were also matching funds from Kirkpatrick Foundation, but I've seen 2 different amounts for that. So I'm a little confused, but my point is there may be more money that if we need to extend her work a little bit or something. I don't know that we're definitely at a standstill with her. We may have options to get more work from her if we need it.
And that would be, I mean, she's most familiar with it. If we can work that would
Be nice.
Mhm.
be
Probably be a lot
nice.
faster.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Uh,
So we'll look I need to review all those documents and we're getting onto all these portals and stuff and figuring out who's given us what money and not, and what we need to do to
We're also gonna
get caught up.
We're also gonna have to get the budget
Mhm.
fairly well understood.
Mhm. Yeah. All right.
Okay, if there's nothing else on item 6 for next steps, other business. Sean, I just gave him my letter of resignation effective May 2nd today.
Do you want a template of Todd's letter? See?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have to
Wow.
resign from planning commission.
Yeah. How about this? I quit.
Don't do it yet, though.
Who wants
We
my
still-
job?
We still need you. We still might need you for another week. Who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. I
Well-
guess.
Went ahead and did a nice letter, and said my effective date would be May 2nd for the resignation. That way I'm free and clear on May 3rd. So
Yeah. Just,
Email him your letter and he
yeah,
can
just
put your
email
name
it
on it.
and make sure it's an editable format so I can just cut and paste.
One thing I didn't put on here for some reason is public comment. So does anyone have any
More
comments?
public comments?
All right.
Mike, you got anything? Nope. Okay. If there's no other business, we'll go ahead and adjourn. It is 4:43.
All right. Thanks.